I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I would like to just welcome everybody who may be tuning into this at some point. My name is Marissa, and I'm here to help interview this lovely crew and cast who's been able to join us today for Bend Film Festival. And they are here representing their film Freeland, which is a narrative feature in our narrative category. We have joining us the director and I believe also writer, co-writer, and cinematographer, if I got that correct, Mario, yes?
Yes.
Mario Furloni. We have our lead who plays Devi, which I'm pronouncing that correctly as well, right? Krisha Fairchild. And we have our producer, Laura Heberton. So thank you so much for everybody joining me today. And we're gonna walk through, I have some prepared questions that kind of run the gamut of some things that are a little more deep and in detail with the story, and then some fun things for the audience as well. So we'll see where we go with it. So my first question is, I think a little more directed at Mario. You know, I was a big fan of the film. I've seen it twice now. And, you know, to me, the backbone of the film that supports the character is, to me, I see sort of as like a classic mom and pop getting squashed by the big guy. But it's really uniquely packaged in this kind of unconventional setting of a pot farm. And so that in itself is a story, certainly, but really it's there to support and be the backdrop that molds Devi's world and her character. So could you talk a little bit about how those two dualities work together to kind of help the film come to life?
Sure. Yeah. I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. So this film started with a doc that Kate McLean, the co-director, co-writer, and I made together 10 years ago, called Pot Country. And for that doc, we were filming in the same community. We were staying in the same town. And we kept going back there. We kept finding excuses to go back there and making, we decided to make a feature, and we decided to make it into a fiction feature because we thought we could get to something deeper by fictionalizing it because of access issues. People are very secretive in this region. And so to get a full portrait of a character, we thought that it would be best done as a fiction, but that really draws very strongly on the reality of the place. And so we met Laura 7 years ago at IFP, and at that point we had a script that was more a more fictionalized. I think it had more elements that were sort of like, pot was the setting, but not the sort of like drive in the same way. And we kept them, I think, like in some ways it was a process of stripping it down to the essence of the story we wanted to tell, which is how this sort of like macroeconomic thing was affecting an individual, right? And I think that's where, when we got to Krisha, which was in 2015, and we kept going back to her, and then finally when we got back to her with this version of the project, which was like one character, really that one lead that carries the film and really just seeing the world through her eyes, I think what we had was very much so that economic story. And then by building it with Krisha and with the other actors, we found layers of emotion and of you know, the relationship of the characters that I think added then some other layers to the film. But what we started with was that nugget of like, we think pot legalization is great, yes, but what are the consequences of it? I think was the.
No, that's a great explanation, and I really enjoy that background of how all of that history is sort of built into this film. With that said, Krisha, you know, observing you observe your own world as Devi changing, it's sort of this gentle tragedy that you're exuding on screen, sort of through this quiet wisdom, but then you simultaneously have this sort of powerful impactfulness happening simultaneously. So again, another duality in the film, and from my eyes as a viewer. Can you share a little bit about what drew you to this role? Obviously, given the history behind before the film as well, but what drew you into the role and Devi's character specifically? and how you developed her internally. Honestly, you made her feel less like a character and more like a true individual, like somebody I could call up and I want to go travel and meet her and talk to her right now. So
thank you.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, this, the film Sliding Doors, that this could have been a life I could have lived. When I got out of art school and I made the mistake moving to Los Angeles, trying to be an actress. I discovered that, I got nothing but, you're too this, you're not enough that, you're da, 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 da. It was never about what I could do. It was all about how I looked. And I quickly got tired of the idea of doing that for the rest of my life. So I was looking around for something, and I was offered an opportunity to go up and trim at a family place. And knowing myself, I probably would have loved it so much I would have stayed. So the whole idea of this character spoke to me because I'm always fascinated. We all are always fascinated by the road not taken, that fork, the choice I made right there. And so that was what drew me to it. Then as more and more changed up there, and they kept bringing to me what was being done to these people. I come from farmers, and these people were back to the landers. That's who they were when they went up there. They didn't go up there to start an industry. They went up there to live and be allowed to live in freedom. They grew pot for themselves. People started asking for it. They started growing extra. That's literally the way it began. So for me, it takes a certain kind of person to do that. She had built her own place. We see that she had relationships within the communal thing, and then she was on her own. And I think it's interesting that all of her workers are of a different generation. She doesn't know that these peers of hers are traveling the world and have turned their farm over to their son. There's a generational piece that was very huge to her in her youth, and then it's gone now. And the rug is being gently tugged out from under her. And so she's a stubborn person. You don't make it in that world without being a stubborn person. But she knows exactly what's going on all around her, which I think is interesting when you cross the line into paranoid ideation and, oh God, could this be happening this way to me, the person who was part of this commune where we trusted our lives to each other? So once they honed in on what the story was that they really wanted to tell, and I kept up with the history, I couldn't say no to it. It was an important story to people of my age, and as it turns out, it's an important story now to people of any age that are experiencing a similar phenomenon.
No, that's excellent insight, and I think the generational piece of this is huge, and it's a story untold in a lot of ways, particularly with the subject. So I really appreciate how you emulated that through sort of your past knowledge of it, and also just everything you brought to the character. It was so appropriately subtle. I mean, a lot of what you said just didn't even require words. You just did it beautifully. So thank you for your performance in that way.
Well, I have to say, no performance ever stands alone. We all know that. And the other actors that also brought their stories, it would only have been a piece of a story if those other actors had not brought a fully realized backstory that then when we mushed them all together, and then Mario and Kate took it like dough and molded it and caught it. Mario's cinematography and directing style was do what's real. I'll be there with the camera. You don't worry if you're at the right angle. You don't think about, I asked him one time, oh, did you catch that I kind of almost cried? Should I turn my head more the other direction? And he went, no, I'll take care. You just like that. And that is an amazingly collaborative thing. What you saw me do would not have been anywhere near as effective if it hadn't been that we were all doing the same exact thing in our own jobs at 5,000%.
Well, you are the perfect lead-in. I don't know how you knew what my next question was.
Oh, sorry.
No. My next question actually was in regards to kind of Mario, how you shift. I know you have a strong background in being a documentarian, moving to this feature film format. Any challenges you had with that, or realizations, or new styles, or if you really, it sounds like you kind of used that to your advantage and brought that to the feature world. So if you want to talk about that transition a little bit.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think in some ways, maybe the hardest part, if you think all the way to the beginning of the process, was to get rid of some assumptions about fiction that I had in my head, I think. And I think Laura was instrumental in that. When we met her, we had, an okay script. I think it was fine, but Laura saw something in there.
It was exciting. It was an exciting script. Yeah.
But I think you said that to us later. It was like you saw the world, and then we had all this like stuff built around it that was like, stories that we heard a million times, and there felt a little more pat now in retrospect. I can say that. And then like, I think the process of building it was stripping away those things that we thought a narrative had to have, right? Like, and it had to be shot this way, and it had to cost this much. And then getting back to like, how do we make films? We get a few people, the minimum amount of possible people in a place, and we mess with the environment as little as possible. We find the right spots to film it. We find the right people to perform, and we try to create an environment where everybody feels safe and free, and and then we film it as unfussily as possible, and we're there when those moments happen, and Krisha is definitely right. It's like, it doesn't matter if it's the angles right. Sometimes, in fact, often cutting the film was a matter of like, let's not use the shot where we see the face. Let's use the shot where Devi actually turns away from the camera and is crying, because if somehow it feels more real, and that was a lot of it. It was, working with two great editors who work in both fiction and doc as well, So I think in some ways was demystifying in our heads a bit of what fiction is about, or I hate the term narrative, for instance, because docs are narratives, right? Like, unless it's an essay doc. True. So I feel like we're making a narrative, and it happens to be with professional actors and not with real people. So anyways, yeah. So I think getting to that point was what was the hardest thing, and I think Laura because Laura works a lot in that style. And when we met Laura, that was the thing. Like, we had met a bunch of people, and some people were really interested in working with us. But we saw Laura's work, and we were like, oh, that's like, she has this sort of like this sort of taste that is very. That's where we want to be, That's where we want to get to. So, that was really fortuitous.
Yeah, and it just seems like I feel like as a documentarian and doing narrative in that format, you're very much strongly your intuition is put on the spot because there's certain decisions you don't necessarily always have the ability to replay, if you will. You just have to go for things, and it sounds like you kind of brought that with you for this, and in the way that your directing style and all that. So that's really interesting. Switching gears a little bit, Laura, I'm wondering if you could talk from a producer standpoint, any challenges or other things that you noticed. I know, so environmentally wise, a lot of the backdrop, which was gorgeous, were the pot farm environments, and those were actual, as you mentioned earlier, Mario, actual pot farms. So did you have, from a production standpoint, a community standpoint, any issues, challenges, or did you find the opposite true? Or how did all of that work from your perspective?
It worked incredibly well because of a woman who worked on the film with us called Claire Weisbluth, who grew up in that place. Yeah, amazing. I used to always joke, and it's not really a joke. I used to say, Freeland by Kate McLean and Mario Furloni, a film by Claire Weisbluth, because without Claire, we couldn't have made the film at all. I mean, she's a filmmaker and an editor, but again, she grew up in that area. So because of her, we had access to, farms that relate to her family, their friends. It's a very dangerous and scary place. So just in terms of navigating that area, it was essential that we had somebody there who knew what was going on just logistically, but also Claire really understood the landscape in the large picture. So she was absolutely instrumental. And Kate and Mario had spent a lot of time going up there, back and forth and up there and scouting and spending a lot of time and getting to know people and getting to know the area. So sort of back a little bit to the prior question, it's interesting. I think as everyone says incorrectly, people make documentarians. A lot of people would ask me all the time about the project, and they would say, well, what makes you think that like people only make docs can make this narrative? And I was like, well, because people who make documentaries, I can't say it today, are directors, and they direct and they know how to be there and they know how to look for the detail. And so it was just over quite a long time, Kate and Mario together, and sometimes with Claire, but really looking for the details. And I think by the time we were ready to shoot, they really understood exactly what we needed, what we didn't need. And I think by simplifying it, I think it made it stronger. And so I think that was.
I would add just a couple, thing. I think it's a practical thing that filmmakers would appreciate knowing. Like, so I mean, to that transition, there's some practical things that we kept the crew as small as possible. We had 7 people in the crew, and that's including Krisha, who not only acted but did like 100 other things in the film, right? Like she.
Wow. Yeah.
And so we kept the crew very small. But there were things that we learned too. We did the filming shoot. We did a main shoot, and then we had a little reshoot later. And at first we didn't want to slate, and we thought, it's going to be better if we don't slate. Because the transition between not filming and filming is going to be a little more permeable. This is going to be fun. We realized that better to slate, right? Like there's a good reason. and especially when our editors, because at first we worked with an editor who mostly cuts docs. She didn't mind the not slating, but then we worked with Chris, who mostly works in fiction. He's like, why aren't you guys slating? It's so nice to have and we're like, oh, I don't know. And he's like, no, trust me. So the second time we slated, and it was better, so there are things there, sort of like just practical things that we had to learn. We were learning 100 million things a minute, but I think that transition was easier because we made it in this particular way. I think if we're working on a much bigger scope, as a first film, would have been potentially disastrous.
Yeah, sure. That makes complete sense. I have one particular storyline question that I'll just leave open for anybody to answer, and then we'll wrap it up with some what's everybody doing and last thoughts on the film. So to me, there's this very stark and telling contrast in one particular scene in the film, and I would like somebody or several of you to talk about its insertion in the storyline, because the expo, it's such a perfect and quick hit contrast to the rest of the film to really dig into. Again, another very quick, you don't even need dialogue in that scene. It's just an observational scene that you really understand Devi just like that, just by watching her deal with this. So can we talk about the expo scene a little bit, and how it came to be, and why, and just any of your thoughts on that?
I'm happy to start, but then I want you to join in, Krisha. So basically, that was the first thing we shot, right? Krisha had come in from Mexico, where she lives, and the way we shot it was how we would shoot a doc. In that case, it was very much so. We had a camera, a sound person, Kate, like with a monitor, and we just went there, and we filmed Krisha in character interacting with the space. And we had a little bit of a storyline that we wanted to build within the scene. And halfway through, we gave up on it because what we didn't realize, I hadn't gone to one of these expos in 5 years. And I didn't realize the jump in technology and in financing, like the sort of like how high tech and business-like that expo would be, and how out of the water Devi would be. And so when we got there, we were like, holy smoke, this is like better than our best dreams for this scene, right? We were surprised, and we were just filming it as we saw it, like, you know, and as Devi interacted. So later we would go and tell people, hey, this is actually for a fiction film, you know, and get releases and do it like that.
So a little bit of a happy accident.
My God, a huge happy, yeah.
That's great.
To me, experientially, it was like a metaphor for the whole indie shoot experience. Because sometimes when you show up for the first day of an indie shoot, it's a total clusterfuck, but only because the people don't really have what they need to do things, and they're faking everything. In our case, we thought, I mean, I don't know about you, but Mario, I was like, we are gonna nail this puppy. You know, we did all of our research. I'm like sending back and forth. We're sharing pictures of what it looks like on the floor of the expo hall. And I'm like, oh, look how everybody's giving away little samples. How about you guys? I'm gonna sew these little bags out of scraps of vintage fabric. And then we'll have a scene where you see her stuffing buds into the bags, and she's gonna be giving away samples of her product. And they're all like, oh my God, yeah, you know, and I mean, we showed up like, yes, we are ready to strike. This is going to be first day. Blah, blah, blah. And then it literally, experientially, it was like we had suddenly all dropped acid. Mm-hmm. We were all like, what the heck? The first guy in the door, Mario, was the guy with the big machine, the mm-hmm. guy with the big chamber that did the gas and the lights all going on and off. And I'm standing there, and he's giving me a spiel. And literally, I know my jaw was like down here for like half of it. And then when he made me go over and push the button, and the whole thing goes into this, it was like something out of the Wizard of Oz. I was totally like, you know, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. The whole experience of that day, nothing could have bonded us better. Nothing could have turned us into a team better than that. The rest of the shoot was like, we were like, hey, we did the convention. We can do this.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Really? I mean, that's what it felt like. It was like by an hour into it, we were like a well-oiled machine. We knew what we could get and what we couldn't get. Everybody was changing everything on the fly, and we just were like, you got to go with it. This is like a tsunami. It picked us up, it took us away, and it was terrifying because we had studied the way it used to be. Mm-hmm. With live musicians banjo picking and people giving away that little, you know, chocolates with little pieces of lace on them, and girls in blue jeans and cutoffs and cowboy hats and singing little numbers. And I mean, we knew how folksy and warm and communal those things usually were. Mm-hmm. And to see that, the whole capitalism aspect of it, we couldn't have been more rocked on our heels, and we couldn't have been more ready to tell the story after being there.
That is so interesting to hear that background, because that really played into the reaction of your character in when it ended up on screen. So I'm really interested to hear that. Thank you for telling that part of that piece of the story. We have a few minutes left, and I would love to open it up to kind of just a plethora of just kind of general. I would love to know what everybody's doing now. So please feel free to do a roundtable here and kind of tell us, pick up where you've picked up where you've left off with the film since then. And then anything else you'd like to really share with the audience about the film that I did not get a chance to cover. So if everybody wants to take a minute and do that, that would be fantastic.
I'm going to go last.
Okay, well, I'm going to go and just, first of all, thank Ben Film Festival for having us. It's really great. Mm-hmm. And really, you're such a great festival. We're really honored to be in the festival. It's really wonderful. And I really do think a lot of people in your audience and locally, you know, there definitely, I think, will be trimmers, hopefully watching this film and really understand it, as well as growers. So that's really great. And I'm working on a couple of features, another feature that we're just trying to finish this week that stars Lily Gladstone, feature doc and a few other things. But I'm also working on a new project with Mario that he can tell you about.
Awesome.
So we're working on it's sort of an environmental horror film set in the Amazon, in Brazilian Amazon. In addition, I mean, I'm trying to, I'm writing lots of different things. We are in early development on a series set in the same world as Freeland, but in the early 80s, just as the transition happened from pot being a recreational plant that people planted there to being something that could make quite a bit of money and that was quite dangerous to do. But that's super early. Yeah, and then I'm writing something right now too. Yeah, just like lots of different things, trying to use this time of no production to get as many projects going as possible.
That's awesome. I did reeling about the Amazon because I've been there as a visitor. And so
did you really?
Oh, that sounds so interesting.
Oh, we'll tell you more later.
Yeah.
I went last because I'm working on staying alive until the next time that someone brings me a script that says something important about what's going on in the world. I think that increasingly everyone needs for there to be content in everything they make. That is about the challenges that our planet is facing. And somebody is going to ask me to be a part of one of those. It's the way it's worked before. I thought after Krisha, I would never get another part that I could really, believe in the way I believed in that one for all those reasons. And with Devi, they gave me one. So I think as the world recovers, that our industry may not be about millions and trillions of dollar budgets and packed houses and opening night takes and whatnot. And I think that it might be, like a lot of other art forms, a way to help save what we can. So I'm going to stay alive for that. That's my focus right now.
I love that, and I certainly hope that to be very true. So, yes.
Me too.
Well, I honestly, I have questions I didn't cover, and I could talk to you guys for another hour, but we do have to kind of cut ourselves at some point. So thank you so much for your presence, for the film, for sharing it with the world. We really appreciate you being a part of our festival. And I hope the audience enjoyed all the insight into the film from the three of you. So thank you so much again for your time. And I think that's where we will leave it. So congratulations.
Thanks for programming us, and thank you for having us.
Thank you
so much.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Have a good day.
Bye.
You too.